Sebastian Maniscalco.
My wife and I went to go see Hamilton on Broadway.
It Ain't Right Tour 2024.
Oh my God, it is amazing. We saw it. Oh, it changed me it changed me. Now, as soon as I hear that, I'm like, I ain't gonna like this.
Sebastian Maniscalco, live on stage in Des Moines, Wells Fargo Arena, December 15th, 2024. Get tickets now at livenation.com. For more, visit sebastianlive.com.
Hello and welcome to Bigger Than 12 on the Iowa Everywhere Podcast Network. Actually, just the Iowa Everywhere Network. We're everywhere. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Jake Brend, joined, as always, by Derek Duke. Derek, how are you, my friend?
Jake, doing good. Another great weekend of football and another great weekend ahead, man. I'm excited, and you gotta love Big 12 After Dark. I didn't post my recap of the Texas Tech Arizona game till 2 a.m. So, I mean, if you're looking to watch football all day, then this is definitely the conference for you, man. It's almost exhausting to a certain point.
Yeah, it's not 11 a.m. We were just talking about that off air, but pretty much 2:30 p.m. on until about 2:30 in the morning. It's nonstop. And before we get in today's 12-pack, just want to address something that one of our staff members posted on social media. Maddie Van Winkle, great producer, great friend, is anti-Mr. Brightside. Derek, what's your thoughts on Mr. Brightside being played at sporting events?
Hot take here, but I agree with Matt. I am not a fan of it at all. Like I'm not really into the whole.
You guys are terrible.
Rock,
unbelievable
emo thing. Like that's not me.
Is it emo? I guess I didn't know.
I don't know. It's just I don't agree with it. Like I'd rather have some old school country or some hip hop in there or something else. I'm not really a big I guess we'd say 2000s rock fan. So that's just my take on it.
If I was in charge of the Iowa State game day experience, that would be number 3 on my list of songs that have to be played every game, following Juicy Wiggle and Swag Surf.
Those are two really good ones, but you don't need Mr. Brightside.
Oh, Mr. Brightside has to be played.
No, get out of here.
Especially for the bridge when all the students chant a explosive towards the University of Kansas out of Lawrence.
KU.
Yeah, exactly like that. And then I think I was at Iowa City a couple weeks ago, and they were playing Chappelle Rowan or whatever. Like, that does not belong in football either. There's no alternative to Mr. Brightside. I think they should play it every quarter, but that's just me.
No, absolutely not.
It's why I don't get paid to run a game day experience. But before we get into today's 12-pack, we are brought to you by WeathCharter Retirement Planning and Tax. We're so glad to have them on board as our presenting sponsor. And Keith Murphy brought this to my attention on Murph and Andy a couple weeks ago. So Tim Hawkins, the owner, the founder, the president of WeathCharter, his son is one of the greatest Division III quarterbacks to ever play. He was at Central for either 5 or 6 years, broke every record known to man, was an All-American, and he absolutely torched my alma mater of Simpson College. So you know for a fact that Tim Hawkins can raise one heck of a quarterback. He also can help you with all of your financial and tax needs. And they truly are for anybody, whether you're just the average working class Joe trying to balance your 401k, trying to get that right, or if you're someone who is close to that retirement age, they can help you with when you're taking out that money, how to handle the taxes. And if you also just need financial advice, they're there for you too. You can go to wealthcharterretirement.com to schedule an appointment at their office in Ankeny. And just, there's not much more important than being aware of your money, how to spend it, where it's going. So go give our friends at WeathCharter Retirement Planning and Tax a call. We're going to crack open a 12-pack of Big 12 topics.
Let's get into it, fellas.
Ooh.
All right.
One more time?
Yeah, for the people. Most impressive team through kind of our second full week of Big 12 play, Jake?
I think it's Texas Tech. I'll let it be known that I did pick them to cover. I did not think they would win. I thought it was a good spot for them coming off of a bye week and going into an Arizona team that had just pulled off a very, very impressive win in Utah. But man, they overcame a lot of adversity. Their best player, Taj Brooks, fumbled twice, and yet they went into Tucson after dark and walk away winners. And we're going to talk about it in a little bit. They have put themselves in a very, very favorable spot to be right around the Big 12 title discussion come late November. Really impressive win out of the Red Raiders.
This may be the only time I get to do this, but I'm going with the Houston Cougars. They beat TCU 30-19 in Fort Worth, and Willie Fritz got his first Big 12 win as a head coach, so kudos to him. Their defense of theirs got 4 takeaways, and they ran the football extremely well thanks to the quarterback change that they made from Donovan Smith to Zion Chris. So I know that change wasn't easy to make for Fritz because Smith has been there in that program for a while now, even with the coaching change from Holgorsen to Fritz. So, but I'm glad he did it because as a result, it helped them get their first conference win of the year. So shout out to Willie Fritz. Really happy for him in that program.
Let's flip it around, Derek. Most disappointing team of the weekend.
I am going to take the Kansas Jayhawks here, and after their disappointing loss to Arizona State 35-31, man, once again, the Jayhawks had a fourth quarter lead with less than 2 minutes left in the game, and they managed to blow it yet again. They let Arizona State rush for over 300 yards, and the sad part is, like, when you play Arizona State, you know exactly what's coming. Like, they're going to run the football, so the fact that the Sun Devils were still able to run for 300 yards on you, that really says something about just really how unprepared you were coming in. And Jalen Daniels, he played better in this game, but it wasn't enough, and now Kansas sitting at 1-5 on the season. And I hate to say it, but there is almost a 0% chance that Kansas is going to make a bowl game this year.
I think Kansas has the belt now for most times winning, most disappointing team. I feel like that's been an every week occurrence. And I know 3 weeks ago, we ran the numbers on their win probability and what it would take. It was like a 0.26% chance they would lose all 3 of the games they did. Well, now that they've lost 5 in a row, the odds of that happening with the win percentages where they were throughout the course of the game, 1 in 10,000.
Wow.
Go buy your lottery numbers, Lance Leipold. My most disappointing team is UCF. Just a no contest against a fairly mediocre Florida team. UCF has shown me enough the last 2 weeks that they are not who I thought they are, and they are not who I thought they were capable of being. KJ Jefferson is at best an average quarterback, and he's not that. And their defense is not that of a team with as high of recruiting classes as they have or as many transfers as they have. Just a really disappointing outcome for UCF to not even be competitive in a rivalry game.
All right, West Virginia took Oklahoma State to the woodshed, which I could not believe Oklahoma State did not make your most disappointing team list. Nonetheless, West Virginia 2-0 in Big 12 play right now. Do you guys see them as a Big 12 title contender?
I can go first. I still don't. I know they looked great against Oklahoma State, but I personally think that game told me more about Oklahoma State than it did West Virginia. Don't get me wrong. They established the run. They proved just how tough they were. Garrett Green got banged up, and it didn't even look like it mattered. But they've got a very, very tough schedule. So this upcoming stretch to go, Iowa State and K-State both come to Morgantown. They still have to go to Arizona and to Texas Tech. I definitely think they're a 7-5, 8-4 team. Neil Brown will be there next season, but I still am having a hard time envisioning them being there in the mix at the end of the season.
I'm going to disagree with you there. I think at this point in time, I think you have to say yes just because of how open the title race is in the conference. I love the approach this team has offensively. They're just going to run right at you with Green, Donaldson, and Jaheim White. I mean, they almost ran for 400 yards on Saturday against Oklahoma State. And their defense, to their credit, is getting better each week. The other reason that I kind of like their schedule. I mean, they have 2 big tests coming up against Iowa State and Kansas State, who they both, by the way, get at home, which is big. I mean, if they can get a win out of those next 2 games, they could potentially get to 7 wins in the conference. They still got to play Arizona, Cincy, Baylor, UCF, and Tech. That's who's left on their schedule. So I think if they can split here in the next 2 weeks, I kind of like their chances of possibly sneaking into Arlington.
Oklahoma State 0-3 in Big 12 play already. Do you guys see this as a coaching problem or a personnel problem? Derek, go ahead.
It's both. And first off, I think we can all agree that Alan Bowman is not the guy to lead this team into anything meaningful. And it's a shame that it took Mike Gundy this long and his staff to realize that, because we saw him get benched on Saturday against West Virginia. Get this team has the most experienced offensive line, yet they are second to last in rushing yards in the Big 12. Plus, Ollie Gordon went down in that game, and even the guys on the broadcast during the game were wondering if that was the last time that we're going to see Ollie Gordon in an Oklahoma State uniform, which is very possible when you consider his future in the NFL. And the worst part of all this is their defense has regressed so much to the point where I don't even recognize it. The Cowboys have the worst run defense in the Big 12, and they have given up the most red zone touchdowns as well. Brian Nardo, their defensive coordinator, and Casey Dunn, the offensive coordinator, to be honest with you, they probably should both be canned at the end of the season. This program needs a shakeup because this season has completely gone off the rails for this team. And it's just head scratching what you're seeing from them offensively. Like Alan Bowman running a draw on 2nd and goal from the 12-yard line. Like, are you kidding me? And they were in such a tight formation that it wasn't even spread out to make it, open it up. So I'm kind of done with Casey Dunn at this point. Brian Nardo, you can say what you want about him as a DC, but I'm out on Oklahoma State right now. I think it's a coaching and a personnel problem.
Yeah, it's clearly a mix of both. I'll lean more into the coaching to return 10 starters on the offense, along with Ollie Gordon, the Doak Walker winner, and to regress as much as they have to get the output that they have. It's pathetic. To face these stacked boxes and to get nothing out of the quarterback spot, whether that is Alan Bowman or whoever is behind him, it's coaching malpractice to leave Alan Bowman in those situations when he is not proven at all that he can beat a defense this year. And I know they made the Big 12 championship last year. I still think that team was a little bit fluky with how they started and then the hot streak they got on. And then you talk about the defense. It's never really been an overwhelming strength under Mike Gundy. But when Jim Knowles was there before he left for Ohio State, it was really good. And you put it very well that it's unrecognizable. It looks like a group of 5 team, or it did look like a group of 5 team playing defense on Saturday. I don't think the Mike Gundy era is over. In fact, the Mike Gundy era is over. When he says it's over, that's how it should be. But I'm not very certain that his coaching style is going to work in this modern era. With how he started the season at Big 12 Media Days with his comments about Ollie Gordon, it just feels like this is not something that's made for the long run in Stillwater. And that pains me because I'm a Mike Gundy guy through and through.
I'm right there with you, Jake.
Same.
The Red Raiders have been red hot. Jake, do you think that they could legitimately represent the Big 12 in the college football playoff this year?
Yeah, I think they could. We kind of left them for dead. I said on this show, I just don't understand every year where the Tech hype comes from. And I'm not saying that wasn't warranted because of what they did show in the first 2 weeks, which was a blowout loss to Washington State and a near overtime loss to an FCS school. But they are undefeated with Taj Brooks in the backfield. He's 3rd in the country in yards per game. Tech is great in the red zone, best in the Big 12, over a 90% success rate, and they're top 25 in turnover margin. That is the making of a good team. The con is their defense is bottom 10 in the country. Here's the weird part, though. They're tied with Iowa State for the most turnovers forced in the conference, and they're very undisciplined, the sixth most penalized team in football. So all that to say, I don't even think Texas Tech is a top 25 team nationally, but they've got a really soft schedule. And if they just win the games they're favored in, they will be in Dallas. And if they're in Dallas, they've got as good a shot as any to beat whoever is on the other side. So, long story short, they could represent the Big 12. For the Big 12's sake, I don't know if we want Texas Tech representing because it could be ugly. Is that fair?
I guess I would say that would be ugly. I mean, I'm all for whoever represents the conference.
I'm the same way.
I think I was the one that kind of talked you off the Tech ledge there for the hype. Like I gave Joey McGuire a little bit of a pass there towards the beginning, but it's a bold question here, but I'm going to say no. And as someone who's been buying the Texas Tech stock the last 2 weeks, I just don't think I'm at the point where I'm ready to crown them just yet. I mean, the defense, you mentioned, like they've had their poor moments, but I actually think they're actually playing better right now. From what I saw against Arizona,
they're clutch.
I thought that they came up big in key situations. They held Arizona like 3 for 14 on third down in that game. And they did a job of getting pressure on Fafita, which is something that they've really struggled in this season on the defensive side of the football. And that's why I think why some of the numbers are just so unbalanced for them. But, offensively, you have Baron Morton, who's quietly having a career year. Taj Brooks looks like the best running back in the Big 12. He had a couple fumbles in the game, but the man also scored 3 touchdowns in that game. And plus, as you mentioned, and I've mentioned before, that schedule of theirs, very, very friendly. So this team will be in the Big 12 title hunt in late November, but I'm not ready to declare them the favorite right now at this very moment. Obviously, that could change as time goes on, but I really like this Tech team, and I like the way they're set up to possibly get in Arlington come December.
Derek, who's the best team in Utah right now? BYU or Utah?
I would answer that question with the question because is Cam Rising healthy? Because if he is, I would take Utah all day and twice on Sunday, but we do know what Sundays are for in the state of Utah, but I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go with BYU if Isaac Wilson is the quarterback for Utah. Both teams have a solid defense, and when you look at the numbers in the conference, they're really neck and neck. Like it's like Utah 4, BYU 5. It's in so many of those major categories that you see. But it's going to boil down to the quarterback, and I would simply, right now at this very moment, take Jake Retzloff over Isaac Wilson. Don't get me wrong. I am not on the BYU hype train. I'm still a doubter, in fact, but I would take the Cougars over the Utes any day of the week just due to the Utah's quarterback situation. And damn it, Kyle Whittingham, is Cam Rising ever going to freaking come back? Like, what's going on over there?
I don't know. It's getting weird. It's getting to the point where the Utah fan base is getting very, very restless, and I cannot blame them. Can I go neither? Can I go off the board, Aiden? Is that okay?
Is Deacon Hill the starting quarterback of the team that you're going to pick?
Well, I was going to go with Spencer Petras in the Utah State Aggies. I mean, I don't know how a program could let a guy like Petras go, tearing it up out there in the Mountain West Conference, 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards. I'm sort of kidding. I'm going to go Utah still just because of track record. I'll stay true to myself to where I need to see it one more week out of BYU. And since we last talked, they haven't played. They were on a bye week. I'll just, out of the sheer fact of what Utah has done in the past, I'm going to give them a pass. But this week will tell us a ton about both teams as BYU hosts Arizona and Utah goes out to Arizona State. And then we've got the Holy War coming up in just over a month. I cannot wait for that.
Man, I was catching strays even on this podcast.
Ooh. I just respect Petras. He's a good guy. Always a good interview. Good quarterback, too.
All right. UCF is looking to avoid a third straight loss this weekend, hosting Cincinnati. Jake, does UCF have long-term problems?
I've got kind of a vendetta against UCF. I've lost a lot of stock on these guys. Last year, I thought they were a a pretty good sleeper pick, a trendy sleeper pick to come in and contend in the Big 12. They went 1-4 on the road in conference play, finished the season 6-6. This year, they were thought of as a contender by most. At one point, ESPN's FPI, their football power index, had them as the favorite by quite a wide margin. I never believed that, but I did believe that they were absolutely in the hunt the way they ran the ball and the way their defense looked in the second half of that TCU game. But they've proven that they are a pretender. This year, in my opinion, has already backfired because they've lost 5 players mid-season to redshirts, one of them being Xavier Townsend, one of the most dynamic players in the entire league. And to lose 5 guys mid-season, a couple guys that are playing, that are putting up stats, that tells me that there's somewhat of a culture problem. I'm not in the program. I'm not covering them day to day. I can't speak on that officially, and I can't speak what the culture problems are, but it just doesn't typically happen in winning programs. And that gets to my more long-term outlook problem. So they brought in the 3rd most transfers this season in the Big 12, behind Colorado and Arizona State. And Arizona State gets a pass, new coach. UCF brought in 28. And you've seen it across the country. I mean, Florida State's the best example there is. It is boom or bust when you are building your roster through the transfer portal. And so far this season for UCF, it's looking like bust. But the good news, they had the 3rd ranked recruiting class come in this season in the 2024 class. They're ranked 2nd in 2025. So unlike most teams that jump up a conference, whether it's from the Mountain West to the Big 12 to from the American to the Big 12, talent is not the issue. In fact, they probably have an abundance of it. I just worry that they are not establishing a winning culture that exists in Manhattan, one that exists in Ames, one that's out there in Salt Lake City or even Provo. BYU's been a winning program. So that's where my concern level is with UCF. I would put it at like a mild concern level just because of the talent that they still have. But their first 2 years have not been encouraging for me.
I think long-term is a bit of a stretch for me because the man had back-to-back 9-win seasons there in 21 and 22. And I think Gus Malzahn is finding out just how hard life is in the Big 12. So last year they didn't have the depth to compete, and it didn't help that John Reese Plumlee got injured so early in the season. And now KJ Jefferson's the guy, and quite honestly, he simply can't throw the football. There's zero threat from this offense when it comes to passing because you know it's just going to be a combo of RJ Harvey and KJ Jefferson just running the ball, and defenses will continue week in and week out to stack the box and dare UCF to throw the football. Plus, their secondary struggling, and they have the 2nd worst 3rd down defense in the conference, only behind TCU. So, as you mentioned with the recruiting classes, like we all know Gus can recruit. Like he can sell somebody ice in the snowstorm. That's just who he is. Like he's a great seller. He's a great recruiter. I don't think there's been any question about that in his entire career, even when going back to his Auburn days. So for me, I think the offense just needs some new wrinkles in it. Like you need to find a quarterback, maybe in the transfer portal this year, that isn't just known for his running abilities. Like maybe have somebody that can actually throw the football, open up your offense a little bit more. You can have some new wrinkles in the offense and just do some different things, because right now you're so one-dimensional, and I feel like you're really limiting your team's ability, your recruiting ability. Like you're limiting everything on just trying to establish one thing when you have so many great athletes in the state of Florida and across that whole region in Orlando, where I feel like you can open things up a lot more and set yourself up for success a lot better down the road.
And them being so one-dimensional, it's hurting the dimension that they should be elite at. That they should be the top rushing attack in the Big 12, if not top 3. But because they can't even throw the ball 12 yards down the field, it has completely neutralized the run game, and they're going to be middle of the pack.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Derek, TCU sits at 3-3, 1-2 in the Big 12. Do you think the seat under Sonny Dykes is hot?
I'm not ready to put him on the hot seat right now. The man is less than 2 years removed from playing for a national title. Like I think even Ed Orgeron at LSU got more time after that. But What's hurting TCU is defense and turnovers. They have 12 turnovers in their last 3 games, and they have the second worst run defense in the conference. On top of that, they're the second most penalized team in the Big 12 as well. If they can clean up the turnovers and the penalties, we may not even be having this discussion at all right now. So I think also, I want to say this, even though it's 2 years ago, I think we're learning right now just how much Max Duggan carried that team 2 years ago, because you were seeing the effects of what they did last year from after a 5-7 record. Right now, there may be a fringe bowl team. So another thing I wanted to just kind of shout out here, one thing I found interesting going back on TCU was I couldn't believe it. Out of their last 6 years, TCU has had just one season where they have won more than 7 games, which was, of course, the magical 2022 season. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Maybe is there a bigger problem around TCU or in Fort Worth that we don't know about? So maybe something's going on behind the scenes. But I found that stat pretty interesting, especially after Gary Patterson was there for so long.
That's interesting. You do kind of forget how bad they were at the end of the Gary Patterson era. Like, there's a reason it ended as ugly as it did. But you pretty much took the words right out of my mouth. It's kind of the same problem as UCF. Talent's not the issue. They brought in the second highest recruiting class in the Big 12 this year. They've got the top class in 25. So talent's coming in to the program. But again, they got 24 transfers. It can be hard to build a program when you've got that many transfers, too many turnovers, too many penalties. And I went back and looked at this because I was curious what the turnover margin was. So in 2023, they were last place in the Big 12. In 2022, they were 33rd best nationally in turnover margin. I would imagine most of that comes back to Max Duggan, and he must have been disguising a lot of problems that are there in Fort Worth. And that's why I'm not going to say that Sonny's seat is hot, because he gets so much leeway because of that season. But if these recruiting classes aren't being developed into NFL talent and wins, it wouldn't take long for his seat to get warm because of the lack of discipline that starts at the very top of the program.
I've been a huge Kenny Dillingham fan.
Oh, yeah.
Since day one at ASU. My roommate Andrew, he gave me a hard time last year after the Sun Devils did not look good. I said, let him get his guys. Just let him get his guys. They're 4-1 right now. Jake, do you think they make a bowl game this year?
They've got a tough schedule, but do you know what they have that other teams don't? They've got Cam Scatterbo. They ran the wild scat against Kansas to punch it into the end zone in front of Iowa Everywhere's own Keith Murphy. He was down there for his son Colin's family weekend. They've got a tough schedule, but I do think they get to 6-6 because they've got Cam Scatterbo, who is good enough, I think, to win 2 games by himself.
No, he's incredible to watch, and I still, is it Scatterbo?
It's Scatterbo.
Scatterbo. Okay.
Yeah.
I still don't know how to say his name right, but he's a hell of a player to watch. So I say they do. I'm kind of with you right now. They're sitting at 4-1, but they do, as you mentioned, have a tough path to get to 2 more wins. They host Utah on Friday night, and they play back-to-back road games at Cincinnati and Oklahoma State, along with trips to Arizona, Kansas State, and then they get UCF and BYU at home. I think they will win one of their next 2 on the road, and they will pull off an upset somewhere down the road in the season. So, for this team, get this team was picked to finish dead last in the preseason. And for them to make a bowl game in year 1 in the Big 12 would be nothing short of an incredible head coaching job by Kenny Dillingham. So really, really impressed with what this program can achieve here, and hopefully maybe in a couple weeks.
They've got the advantage, too, of their home games are going to be so much tougher for a team like UCF or a team like, really any of the non-4 corner schools to go out there. So I agree with you. I think they get to 6.
All right, this next question, it's not an if, but a when. When will Baylor fire Dave Aranda? Derek, go ahead.
Damn, man, this show's getting dark. We're talking about a lot of hot seat coaches in this episode. So Oh, man. So honestly, they should have done it last Saturday and left his ass in Ames. Give him a pack of Ames lager, let him drown his sorrows, and Baylor just going to owe him a bunch of, millions of dollars for the next 3 or 4 years. So, I mean, at this point, what is Baylor doing? Why is Dave Aranda still the head coach at Baylor? They should have locked his ass out of the building yesterday. They should have, and speaking of that, they should have never brought him back after that 3-9 season last year. And now, once again, they are staring down another season where they would likely not make a bowl game, which would make 3 straight losing seasons in Waco. And get this, after the Iowa State game, the Dave Aranda tracker here, he is now 2-13 in his last 15 Big 12 games and 3-17 in his last 20 games against FBS opponents. Baylor, what are you waiting on? I mean, get the man out of there already.
I don't agree with it, but in today's day and age, if you're going to get rid of a coach, it is better to do it sooner rather than later. The reasoning that I've heard from Baylor fans as to why they're holding on to him is, well, we've got the 3rd best recruiting class coming in 2025. Who can't recruit to Waco? It's a private school, a bunch of oil money. I get it's Waco.
Have you been to Waco?
That came off wrong.
Yeah.
Like, my answer should have been, who can't recruit to Baylor? They've got the shirts. We pay players. Yeah, so does everybody else. I don't see any reason to hold on to Dave Aranda for more than they already have, but maybe they're just really, really bought in to what he's promised because he is a charismatic guy. He's a likable guy. I like Dave Aranda. I think he could be a really good defensive coordinator somewhere, but it's just not going to happen with Baylor. And the longer he's there, the worse and worse it'll probably get.
Yeah, tough scenes down in Baylor. Will Houston, Jake, finish last in the Big 12 this year?
So they've already got a win, which is more than we probably expected from them at this point, because at this time last week, we were asking, are they going to score a point? So good work to Houston for doing that and getting the win. Chris Williams has been kind of nailing the head on this. I think they're similar to where Iowa State was when Matt Campbell took over, that Willie Fritz will have this program in a better spot by the end of the season to look ahead to maybe a bowl season next year. And the fact that they've already got a win is huge when there's a few teams in the conference that don't. So they've got, I would say, 2 winnable games remaining on their schedule. They host KU in 2 weeks following a bye, and then they host Baylor on November the 23rd. Baylor, they probably have the most winnable games of the bottom 4 teams remaining. They still have Oklahoma State, TCU at home. They go to West Virginia, to Houston, KU at home. I'm going to say they don't finish last. I think it's going to be either Kansas or Oklahoma State with what they have remaining on the schedule. And granted, Houston could finish in a tie for last. I just don't think they're going to finish alone in last place. And for them, I mean, all things considered, how they opened Big 12 play, that's probably a win.
Oklahoma State finishing last, I think Stillwater would burn down if that happened. But
Oklahoma State, sorry to cut you off. Oklahoma State's probably most winnable game remaining is Arizona State at home. So
that might be a toss-up too. Yeah. I don't know.
Not easy.
No. Despite their big upset win against TCU, I think they still finished last. I mean, that remaining schedule there, I looked at it. It's brutal. They got to play Kansas, Utah, Kansas State, Arizona, Baylor, BYU. Of course, the Kansas and the Baylor games, probably their most winnable opportunities there, but they may pull off another upset down the road to keep them out of last place, but I don't see it. I think the move to Zion Chris at quarterback will help, and their defense is respectable enough. We like to crap on the offense a lot, but their defense is respectable enough to keep them in games. But for right now, they're still the worst Big 12 team in my eyes. But like you said, there's a lot of similarities to where Campbell started in 2016 at Iowa State and where Willie Fritz is now with the Houston program after Dana. And to his credit, Willie Fritz has been a winner every single place he has been at. So give the man some time, give him 2 or 3 more years down the road. We'll see where this program's at.
He just needs one win.
I think the best defense for any new coach is just let him get his guys. Just let him get his guys. We'll see what happens. Just let him get his guys.
And it doesn't work in basketball anymore because it's like,
Right.
he has every chance to get his guys. But yeah, football,
right.
there's still the excuse of depth, which I don't think exists anymore in basketball.
He's got some talent in Houston to work with too. So that kind of
Yeah, that too, for sure. Last one here, Derek. What was your biggest takeaway from the weekend?
My biggest takeaway this weekend is a lot like Iowa State receiver Jaden Higgins. It's wide open. The Big 12 title race, it's fun, and I don't think you will find a more exciting conference title race in all of college football. You know, we're starting to get a better idea of who the contenders are and who the pretenders are. So for me, it's just about buckling up and enjoy the car crash that is the Big 12 title race, because it is going to be wild down the finish.
It sounds kind of crazy. I didn't really have a takeaway from this weekend. K-State, BYU, Utah were on a bye. Texas Tech, Arizona, in my eyes, was already kind of an elimination game for Big 12 contenders. We're going to talk Iowa State in a minute. I think Iowa State proved they are exactly who I thought they were, just a level above a team like Baylor. So it's boring, but my takeaway is this week is going to be what tells us maybe the most of what we've learned this entire season, with marquee games pretty much top to bottom outside of Cincinnati, Central Florida. Sorry if that was lame, Aiden. It was lame, but
That's fair. It was hard to come up with the takeaway this week just due to how many teams were off. So we'll see.
And how many
obviously.
marquee teams? Because
Exactly.
my biggest question has been a team like BYU, or a team. I want to see Kansas State go back on the road. I don't have questions about them at home. I do have questions about them this Saturday in Boulder, and we just didn't get to learn much out of that other than maybe Texas Tech might never lose again with Taj Brooks starting in the backfield. But Aiden's going to come in for a trivia question in just 1 second, but I've got some trivia for you. Do you know that you can go to Freedom Tire in Altoona, Ames, Fleur Drive, Des Moines, West Des Moines, and Urbandale? You can go get new tires. It's the perfect time of year for it. Somehow it's still touching 80s almost every single day in Iowa. That will not be the case eventually. Go get your tires now. Go get your car looked at now. Make sure it is all winter ready, and do it with our friends over at Freedom Tire. You can visit freedomtire.com or just walk into any of their stores in Altoona, Ames, Fleur Drive, West Des Moines, or go over to Urbandale and hit up Hickman Road. We want to thank our friends at Freedom Tire, Quentin Crowner and his team has his employees ready to go throughout Central Iowa. Now Aiden comes in with another trivia question about our great state.
All right, I'm stumping Derek this week. There is a 0% chance of you getting this right, but we're going to ask it anyway. This alley, it's an alleyway, between Washington Street and Columbia Street in Burlington, Iowa, is famous for what?
My roommate from college is going to be so disappointed in me. He was a proud B-Town resident, proud Burlington native. I've got a decent guess. Derek, if you've got any sort of guess, feel free to go first.
I don't know. I don't know, man. It's probably going to be something like it's the crookedest street in the world or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
It's the most downhill, right?
Yeah, no.
Oh, yeah. I do remember hearing about this. Yeah. Yeah, they used to Braden Hayes, shout out my former college roommate. They would just after school go drive cars down it, and like apparently it's super dangerous, but gosh, I can't believe Derek got that.
He's a huge Burlington fan, that Derek.
Oh man.
Touches the Mississippi
Nick.
River. That was really impressive.
We got you. We just got you there. That's what happened.
I told him the answer.
You knew that ahead of time.
We set it up beforehand just to see a reaction. So
no, seriously, the second you mentioned it, I do remember hearing about that.
I would have never.
I think it's by a golf course or something like that. man, that dove deep into my long-term memory.
Your Iowa knowledge.
Well, we've buried it enough. I kind of forgot that Iowa State is 5-0. Just kidding. I've not forgot about that. Pretty much have thought about it every 3 seconds.
Been partying like it's 1980.
And yeah, I'm going to crack one for the Iowa State Cyclones, courtesy of our friend Brent Bloom, a nice Ames lager.
Lucky.
A crisp Ames lager, refreshing. Not a sponsor, but free advertisement for our friends over at Westo.
Just rubbing it in my face.
So, for tonight's Iowa State topic, let's fast forward to January 15th, 2025. What would be considered a disappointing season for Iowa State, and what would have had to go wrong for that to happen?
At this point, I think I would say anything under 10 wins would be a disappointment. As we all know, I've said multiple times on this show that this would be the year that Iowa State makes history and wins 10 games. And with their record at 5-0, I don't see how they fall short of that, because all they need to do now is to go 5-2 down the home stretch here to get there. So, and there's a lot, just kind of focusing on the team here. There's a lot I like about this team, and it goes beyond the offense and the defense. They're getting the job done on special teams. You saw that on Saturday with the block punt. They're averaging less than 32 yards of penalties per game, which is second in the Big 12. Plus, you've mentioned turnover margin before. They're tied for 6th in the country in turnover margin. This team is exceeding in areas where they don't normally succeed in. And I saw Chris Williams say this as well, but he's absolutely right. This is where those Brock Purdy team, this is what they were missing. Like those small details and special teams and penalties. And this team is actually doing it, and they have the talent to back it up on the field. So for them to fall short of a 10-win season would be disappointing to me after this hot start. So yes, the schedule is tough at the end with Kansas State and Utah, but if they can play up to their abilities, like, they shouldn't have an issue getting there. My one concern why they wouldn't get there would be the slow starts. Like we saw it in Houston. We saw it against Baylor last Saturday when they got down 14-3. It felt like, we're kind of like, hey, kind of need to wake up here and get going. And they were able to do that with some big plays. But, they may be able to get away with it like teams against like Houston and, Baylor now. But you can't do that against teams like West Virginia on the road or Utah or Kansas State. So for me, it's about them being consistent in every phase of the game. And that's what makes this team successful, in my opinion. They're winning in the margin, so to speak, and that's why they've had so much success this year. So for me, it's just, again, avoiding those slow starts, just being consistent throughout 4 quarters.
I will say, I didn't think the start on Saturday was as it looked. I think it was a little misleading. Iowa State was moving the ball, and then there's just the weird fade route that it's probably a touchdown 50% of the time when you're throwing it up to Jaden Higgins, and then just the odd choice of running somewhat of an inside-outside zone to Abu Sama, whereas, like, trust me, I'm not one of those people that have given up on Abu Sama or have really even criticized him much. I will say in that position, though, I'm typically going Carson Hansen. He's more your power back. He's more the guy I want if you just need to go get 2 or 3 yards on the ground. With that being said, I think there's a world where 10 wins is a disappointing season. And hear me, that sounds so crazy. Just saying that out loud, I had that written out. I didn't realize how crazy that was until I said it out loud. I think 10-2 with a loss in the Big 12 championship would still be considered somewhat disappointing. Obviously, grand scheme of things, no, it's still probably looked at as a success. And I do think there's a world where there's one scenario where 11 wins, I think, would be considered disappointing. And that would be if you're 11-0 going into the final game of the season, lose to K-State, and then lose to K-State again in the Big 12 championship. I think that's the only world where there's an 11-win season that's considered a disappointment. But other than that, I think if you get to 10 wins and win the Big 12, not a disappointment. And if you get to 11 pretty much in any circumstance, win or lose in Dallas, it's considered a success. But with what would have to happen in that, I agree with you. It's the slow starts. It is falling down to West Virginia 10-0 in the first quarter. It's falling even to a team like Kansas. I know what Kansas has shown in the win-loss column. That is not a team where you're just going to be able to go buy yourself a 14-point cushion early. It's the slow starts and it's the injuries on the defense. If the injuries start to spread beyond the linebacker room, like we kind of saw on Saturday night with Dom Orange, J.R. Singleton, Miles Purchase, guys that all did come back in the game. But if we start to see those injuries spread past that singular unit on the defense, there could be more holes in the defense that don't make Iowa State as good as we both think they could be. But, I mean, offensively speaking, I think there's still a lot of room for them to grow, and that's a really good spot to be because I wouldn't say I felt underwhelmed by the offense to this point, but I haven't felt overwhelmed either. I haven't felt like they've been overwhelmingly great.
And
I think they've got the potential to be maybe easily the best offense in the Big 12. Like I would go as far to say they've got that type of potential, and they haven't shown that to its fullest yet. So if that team shows up Saturday, if that team shows up for 3 weeks straight, that's where this season could go from great to special.
No, I think that's totally fair. I think what you're basically saying is like you have yet to see them fire on all cylinders offensively. And I agree with that 100% because I do believe they're capable of being the best offense in the conference when you just look at the weapons they have around them. And another thing that really kind of flying under the radar is that offensive line in theirs is doing a fantastic job so far. Really something that hasn't been talked about a whole bunch, but up front, they're getting the job done as well, which is also something that they have kind of been missing over the last few years as well.
100%. And Aiden's going to come in with a random Big 12 quarterback here in the Channel Seed studios. Can I guess before you give any hints?
Sure.
Whoa.
Brock Purdy.
No.
Dang it. All right.
Tough one. All right. This quarterback, hold on, let me pull up what I was looking for quick. 3-year career at his respective school, compiled 60 touchdowns, including 34 total in his last season at the school. He was then selected in the first round of his respective draft class. I have some bigger hints, but I think it might give it away.
Is there any other hint? That's kind of a broad one. 60 career touchdown passes, you said?
Touchdowns. He had over 60. Let me find the exact number quick. 64 total touchdowns in his career.
3-year starter, first round selection.
Yes.
I feel like there's only so many. Is that passing touchdowns or is that all purpose?
All purpose.
Yeah, that kind of broadens it a little bit more. Might have to have another hint or some kind of like 5-year window or 10-year window. I don't know.
Okay, I'll give you this. This is totally going to give it away.
No, okay, yeah, don't give it away.
He was in between a legendary coaching career. That might not sound like it makes sense, but once you know it, it will make sense.
This is.
Is it a current Big 12 school or is it not a current Big 12 school?
Yes.
It's a current Big 12 school?
Yep.
Oh, man.
He played in the Big 12, all of it.
Legendary.
Give you 15 more seconds.
All right.
Yeah, this is bad podcast. Okay.
I don't even usually
First.
have like a guess or I have an idea. Like I have no idea.
I'm trying to think what qualifies as legendary.
I don't know. It's got to be maybe somebody with like a Bill Snyder or it is.
So it's
I don't know.
But I don't think Kansas State's had a quarterback. Get
Yeah,
drafted
Skylar
first
Thompson
round.
was not a first
No.
rounder.
So it's not that, and I was thinking Oklahoma quarterbacks, but it's not somebody there. But
Is it
It's-
Kyler Murray?
It is Josh Freeman, Kansas
Damn it.
State legend. So
See?
I was trying to say he was in between Bill Snyder's tenures
Oh,
without saying he was in between Bill Snyder's tenures.
it was because Freeman was Ron Prince era, and then he was with Schneider for what, a year? Because he got drafted. I remember this. He got drafted by like Tampa Bay in 09. No?
He so he
He
was
was
at Kansas State from 2006 to 2008.
The exact time
Bill
Ron
Snyder,
Prince was
yes,
2009. Freeman got drafted to the Buccaneers, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He was the
Correct.
Bucs quarterback.
Yes.
that not the Freeman part, but the Bill Snyder question is going to be such a great piece of trivia in like 40 years.
Just came back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, that was not at all what I thought. When I heard first rounder, I was trying to even think of what first rounders had come out of the Big 12 that wasn't at like an Oklahoma
Exactly.
or
I was
Texas
thinking like
Tech.
I was thinking like Baker, because Baker was like he was at the end of the Bob Stoops era, then with Lincoln Riley. Then I also thought with Sam Bradford maybe, but then he said between the legends. I was like, it's got to be Bill Snyder.
I was having a hard time thinking because Snyder went straight into Kleiman, Stoops went right into Riley. I was having a hard time thinking like,
Well,
what legendary coaches had gaps?
to be fair, the Ron Prince era at Kansas State's pretty forgettable. I mean, there's a reason Bill Snyder came back to fix that. So,
man, that was a thinker. Well,
that's a good one.
let's get into our week 7 picks. I'm fresh off. Man, I'm hot. 5-1 week. My first winning week. Boy, did it feel good. I needed that so bad.
You did.
I got my swagger back. I'm feeling this week. We've got big games. We've only got one snoozer. But we're not going to start with that one. We're going to start with Big 12 After Dark on Friday night. Utah at Arizona State, 9:30 in Tucson on ESPN. The Utes are favored by 6.5. The over-under is 45.
Still no update on Cam Rising, and Utah with Isaac Wilson doesn't scare me at all. This is going to resemble a Big Ten game. Think of like Iowa playing Illinois or Northwestern. So 45 is a low number, but I don't see either offense scoring more than 23. So I'm going to take the under. Even for as low as it is, I think I'm still taking the under.
I love the under. Utah, they've struggled to score without Cam Rising, and ASU already loves to slow the game down. Use their main man, the Scatabo. Give me the under. I'm not going to call it a lock, though. I just really, really, really like it. Now, this is easily the toughest of the week to pick. Cincinnati, who has not played since their close loss in Lubbock, goes to a reeling UCF team at 2:30 on Saturday afternoon on ESPN2. UCF's favored by 3. The over-under is 58.5.
UCF loves to run the football, and Cincy's run defense isn't great. I feel like the Knights are going to be up for this one after back-to-back disappointing weekends. So to me, this almost feels like a must-win for Gus. So believe it or not, I'm kind of scaring myself here. I'm going to take UCF to cover the 3 points.
I thought about that too, but the line is so weird to me. I would have thought this was probably a 5.5, 6-point spread. So I kind of got scared away. So I'm going to go under. Last time out, since he did put up 41, but that was one of the weirdest second halves of the season. I think the total is just a little bit too high for what we've seen out of the UCF offense of late. I think the under hits, but not safely. I don't think it's a I don't think it's a sweat-free under, so I probably will not be placing my own money on this game. On Fox at 3 o'clock on Saturday, Arizona. I don't know if there's any team that is more unpredictable in the entire conference than the Wildcats. They go to BYU, and the Cougars are favored by 4 with the over-under at 49.5.
I don't care for the spread here. I am focused on that over-under. This will be a fist fight, and points will be at a premium in this game. Plus, with it being in Provo, that worries me a bit. So I'm going to take the under 49.5 here.
No team has zagged more this season than the Cats, and the BYU atmosphere is now less of a problem once you've already not only played at Utah, but won at Utah. It doesn't make any sense, but I love Arizona +4 here in a prove-it game for BYU. I think they prove that they're probably on the second tier of the Big 12, not the first tier. We'll go with this one. It's not, or it is the last game of the day, but it's not our last pick of the podcast. Number 18, Kansas State, goes to Colorado. The road team is favored by 4.5. The over-under's 56.5. 9:15 kick, Big 12 after dark on ESPN.
This game is all about the trenches for me. Sure, it's great to talk about Avery Johnson and Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter, but Kansas State, make no mistake about it, they have the edge up front. The Wildcats are tied for first in sacks, and Colorado has given up the most sacks in the entire Big 12. So that means I believe Sanders will be under pressure a lot. My only concern about this game is that Avery's on the road here, but I still think Kansas State's able to win by more than 4.5 here.
Unless they want a trip to Ames to be a win, not a win, a lose or go to Dallas type game, this is considered a must-win for Kansas State's playoff chances. They will be ready to go. Avery got his road stinker out of the way. I'm calling Kansas State -4.5 my lock of the week. I love the Wildcats in this spot. And then our final game, who else was it going to be? Number 11, Iowa State, the highest ranked team in the Big 12, traveling to Morgantown for the Riot Bowl. The Cyclones favored by 3 points with the over-under set at 51. A night game, 7 o'clock on Fox.
This is another fist fight type of game between two extremely physical teams. Both teams are going to try to establish a run game, and I think both teams will fail at doing that. In the end, I trust Iowa State's air attack with Rocco Beck and guys like Higgins, Noel, and Bramer. Give me the damn Clones. They're Riot Bowl champs this year, 2024, baby.
Derek, I can't lie. The injuries and the atmosphere scare the hell out of me. This feels so similar to the reverse of Iowa State, West Virginia in 2018. The Mountaineers came into Ames, ranked 6th. Iowa State debuted these new black uniforms. West Virginia is doing the same. But I believe 3 things. I believe that Iowa State is the best team in the Big 12. I believe that West Virginia is a good team. They're in the middle of the pack. And I also believe that Brock Purdy is not walking through that door in Morgantown. Teams like Iowa State find a way. I think they win and they cover to start 6-0 for the first time since 1938. I couldn't tell you anything about the year 1938. Nothing.
What were you doing in 1938?
Was that when Casablanca came out? I don't know. Was it when I'm totally blanking on it. The Dorothy movie. Oh gosh.
Wizard of Oz. Come on, man.
The Wizard of Oz.
I think that was the year after. I think that was 39.
39. Okay, I was close.
Okay. Close.
Dude, my brain is dead, which makes this next minute of fame that I've got a little challenging. But again, I won finally. This is what I've been working for every single hour of every single day since we started this podcast, and it only took me 7 weeks to come out on top.
It was close.
So, what I want to talk about today, yeah, Derek was 4-2. I got to give him credit. So if you tailed either of us, you had yourself a winning weekend. What I want to talk about today is the Trice Stadium game day atmosphere. It is unreal how much better the game day atmosphere has gotten over my lifetime. I remember being 6, 7 years old in the Gene Chizik era. You could run up and down the stands in the third quarter. There's fine attendance, good fan support, nothing crazy. So the majority of the game day atmosphere has been enhanced by the attendance. In the Paul Rhodes era alone, the average per game increased by nearly 10,000 fans per game. And then once Matt Campbell took over, they expanded. They bowled in the southeast end zone. Campbell has reset the record 3 different times. If this season goes how both of us expect, I would imagine next year that record would be reset for the 4th time. Jamie Pollard and his staff have done so much since he took over in the mid-2000s. The RV Village, the fireworks on game day, the speakers, just everything about Trice Stadium feels like big-time football now, and that cannot be said about its entire history. So, with all that being said, I do think there's another step that Iowa State can take to make Trice Stadium get to another level. And I think that it's time to start establishing the history. And let's be real, at least compared to 90 to 95% of the sport, there isn't much history at all at Iowa State. But history has to start somewhere. And that history, it starts with the Dan McCarney statue. We've talked plenty about the impact that Dan McCarney has had on this program, on this state in general, Iowa and Iowa State. Give McCarney his credit, give him his flowers, and give him his statue while he's around to enjoy it. Nothing more pointless than a statue once a guy is gone. And then the next 2 statues should be Matt Campbell and Brock Purdy. Whenever Campbell is done coaching, whenever Purdy's done playing. But let me focus on Matt Campbell. There's a lot of coaches out there in college football that I think could win in Ames under its current circumstances. Thanks to Jamie Pollard, thanks to Dan McCarney, they laid the way, they paved the way for coaches to be able to win in Ames. I don't know how many coaches out there could win in Ames and stay as long as they have after opportunities and seasons they had like 2017 and 2020. Doesn't matter if Matt Campbell leaves January 5th or if he leaves in 2050. Matt Campbell will and should have a stadium. We'll have a statue outside Trice Stadium. And this is what I think is missing the most. Some sort of ring of honor. I know a bunch of schools do it differently. You know, like the Philadelphia 76ers have a bunch of mini statues outside their stadium. Oklahoma, they have mini statues for their Heisman Trophy winners. Well, Iowa State, they don't have any Heisman Trophy winners, but they certainly have players, they have coaches that deserve to be recognized and remembered forever. They deserve to have their name, their face somewhere. And that's Brock Purdy, John Haycock, Troy Davis, Breece Hall, Seneca Wallace, Alan Lazard, David Montgomery, Mike Rose, Matt Blair, Jake Knott, AJ Klein. Those are just a few names that I think would be very worthy of having a flag, of having, however you do it. I'm not the logistical type. And I know if an Ohio State or a Texas fan is listening to this right now, they would probably scoff. And honestly, I don't really care because Iowa State fans, probably more so than any, not only are they aware of the lack of history they have, they don't run from it. They embrace it. And that's why there is such thing as a pissed off atmosphere that legit can win Iowa State games, whether that's in football, basketball, wrestling. And that's, I think, what makes part of the Matt Campbell era so special is the fact that there is such a lack of history and nobody within that building has run from that. In fact, they've embraced it and they've made Iowa State into one of the best programs in the new Big 12. So start recognizing those accomplishments so no matter where Iowa State is in 100 years, whoever walks into that could be a museum by that point. Whoever walks into Trice Stadium will know at least a small part of history about a pretty special time in Ames.
Well said. I agree with everything you said there. I think Matt Campbell one day will get a statue outside the stadium, and rightfully so. I mean, now he's the most winningest coach there in program history, and as long as he's there, I think there's nothing but positive things to say about the program and where it's headed with the culture that he's created, which is really, I mean, culture is a very popular word in college football. Like, everybody loves to use that word, but very few coaches actually understand and preach what that word actually means. And Campbell's one of those guys that does it.
I should add, Jamie Pollard will and should have a statue as well, probably over in Sci-Town. That one will come in due time, though. I have no doubt about that. But, man, is there anything else we need to talk about? I can't think of anything. I think we got it.
Short week.
Yeah, we went like 3 minutes shorter than our average. If you have like an hour and 10-minute drive and planning on this podcast going an hour 10 minutes, I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to throw in some Mr. Brightside or something to
yes,
to get
go
you through
go
the
play
rest of the
Mr.
way.
Brightside a time or two.
No.
Maybe even 3 times. Sing along.
Especially you, Matt Van Winkle.
I would recommend, like, what they do in stadiums is play like half the song and then turn it off and then just sing it by yourself.
Yeah. And then it comes over the TV and it's just beautiful. Man.
Pass.
Shout out to the Iowa State student section, by the way. That was the best Jack Trice Stadium's ever looked on TV.
Agreed. It looked amazing.
There should be a yearly whiteout, yearly Jack Trice game. And
100%.
right there, I mean, that's 2 of your 6 or 7 home games. But it's going to do it for us here on Iowa Everywhere on the Bigger Than 12 podcast. We couldn't do it without our friends from WeathCharter or our friends from Freedom Tire or Channel Seed or any of the good partners that we have right here at Iowa Everywhere. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you would, please leave a review, leave a rating, and tell your friends about Bigger Than 12.